When a notorious serial killer was arrested earlier this year thanks to the DNA of a relative, it opened the door to a sea change in crime fighting. Forensic techniques have advanced dramatically since the first use of fingerprint technology. But Lisa Fletcher reports on a new Science of Sleuthing that's also raising concern.
There were upwards of 50 rapes, 12 murders. Crimes that spanned 10 years across at least 10 different counties.
Last spring, more than 40 years after the first crime, Joseph James D'Angelo, known as the Golden State Killer or the East Area Rapist, was arrested and charged for a string of crimes that terrorized parts of Northern California for decades.
And put me back in bed and said, if you move, I'm going to kill you. So, lay there for 2 hours.
What cracked the cold case was a new tool in DNA forensics. This year, detectives uploaded decades-old DNA from the killer's profile to a genealogy website. That site revealed likely connections between family lines, and those relatives narrowed the link to D'Angelo. Agencies across the country raced to use the same technique to break cases, stopping not just in the Golden State killing spree, but rapidly moving to help solve the murder of a 12-year-old girl in Washington state, the killing of a Pennsylvania teacher, and the murder of an 8-year-old child in Indiana. The key is a publicly searchable DNA website, jedmatch.com. Kurt Rogers, now 79 years old, founded the site in 2010. He did not anticipate that his homegrown website, built for connecting families, would connect the dots on violent crimes.
What were your thoughts after all of that unfolded?
I learned about it when someone wrote me an email saying, hey, there was a press conference and it was announced that you're instrumental in finding the Golden State Killer. I was confused. I was surprised, did not anticipate it, had no knowledge that it was coming. I was very concerned about our users, what they would think, how they would handle it.
The new genetic sleuthing method is taking shape at this unassuming lab in Reston, Virginia, 20 miles outside Washington, D.C.
So we have nearly 50 active cases that we're working currently.
Steve Armentrout is the CEO of Parabon Nanolabs.
We treat the DNA like a blueprint. And so if you have that DNA sample with the crime scene, we can tell you about the ancestry of this person and suddenly start giving investigators somewhere to turn to.
Here's how it works. Police send crime scene DNA to Parabon. That DNA gets uploaded to that publicly searchable site of genetic material, GEDmatch. That doesn't always lead to a suspect. What it often leads to is a relative. Genealogists build out complex family trees to find out who shares genetic data and who could have committed the crime. The result? A scientifically based tip for police to work from. The day we showed up for our interview, Parabon was credited with solving another decade-old case.
Here we are. We made an arrest in it. Finally.
Daryl Dwayne Bowden was arrested and charged with 6 rapes in one small neighborhood in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
The Ramsey Street rapist, they announced that they got a DNA match and have made an arrest. I know there are a lot of people very happy about that.
Have you had any contact with the founders of GEDmatch?
We were in touch with them before the Golden State Killer. They've been aware of our activities from the get-go, and they have been nothing but supportive.
Have you been supportive of them from the beginning?
I knew of them, nothing deep. Obviously, after the Golden State Killer, and they were mentioned not as part of that particular case, but for other cases, then I got to know them much better. And yeah, there's no way we can prevent them from doing it. I would much rather work with them than be fighting with them. So we get along.
GEDmatch, unlike other big players like 23andMe and Ancestry.com, allows law enforcement to search its site. It's explained in clear terms in the user agreement. Quote, in the end, if you require absolute privacy and security, you agree that you will not provide your personal information, raw data, or genealogy data to GEDmatch. End quote.
I'm sure we scared people away because we were much stronger on saying, hey, if you got any concerns, don't use GEDmatch.
Even if you decide not to use GEDmatch, there's a good chance a distant relative has. Rogers estimates an average person has 25 to 30 third cousins on the site. According to a recent study published in the journal Science, that means about 60% of white Americans could be identified without ever having uploaded their own DNA. And as the data bank grows, so does its crime-fighting power.
A woman who wrote me and said, very simply in two sentences, I would like to have my information as visible as possible on your site because my father was a serial killer.
And how quickly a cold case can break.
You're wasting less time, you're going to solve more cases, you're going to make the world a safer place. These technologies are making law enforcement unequivocally more efficient.
If efficiency of law enforcement investigations is our only concern, well, there's a few countries in the world that abide by that principle, but I dare say we're not interested in the law enforcement values of Russia, China, North Korea, or Iran.
Attorney Steve Mercer has been a law professor for 15 years. He's concerned about the explosion of private DNA databanks being searched by police.
There's no warrant, there's no subpoena even, there's no judicial supervision. Even if a family member is the one who puts it up, that should not be left to the self-regulation of law enforcement, because in the competitive business of law enforcement, they're going to push the envelope.
Critics have said, there's no legal oversight for law enforcement when they submit this material to you to pursue these cases.
This is really a very little concern. The police are still responsible for building out a case. So when we give them information, they're going to go conduct their own investigation.
But in these times, when science and technology seems to be expanding at an ever-increasing rate, Rogers, in a sense the grandfather of DNA databases, has concerns.
You had wrestled with the idea of this being used as a law enforcement tool early on. Are you still wrestling with that?
I'm uncomfortable not because of privacy. I'm uncomfortable because of expectations that the people have when they put their data on GEDmatch. I don't want to violate that expectation.
And a footnote, Parabon charges law enforcement $5,000 per case. Kurt Rogers, who started GEDmatch, makes no money when his site is used to fight crime. So do these cases hold up in court? Well, this is all happening in real time. The courts have never ruled on whether searching these genetic databases is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Very interesting. Great report. Thanks.